Should you boycott the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics? I guess you first have to ask yourself the question, would you have boycotted the 1936 Berlin Olympics that was held by Nazi Germany and Hitler? I guess maybe not, because back in the day we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet, we didn't have this free flow of information that allowed us to see what was really going on within the borders of Nazi Germany. We had to rely on newspapers and journalists and, the usual channels that are out there. People reading newspapers, maybe getting a telegram, that kind of thing, listening to the wireless radio, those who had the money to afford that kind of thing. Nowadays, though, there isn't much excuse. We know exactly what's going on. Although China tries very hard to block access to news in China and quickly deletes any discussion about anything negative, is very controlling on what leaves the country, whether it be through the internet or any kind of news media. And if somebody does come out like a dissident or an activist, they get completely discredited by hordes and hordes of state-backed people that are there for that one purpose, to delegitimize whatever that person is saying. So what I'm saying to you is that yes, back in 1936, there would have been a lot of opposition to the Olympics, but not that much, not on a massive global scale anyway. Should we even politicize the Olympics? I mean, it's all about countries getting together, playing sports and competing with each other. It's kind of like the whole world coming together. It's a positive thing, right? Well, yes, we should politicize the Olympics. Why? Because China politicizes the Olympics and always has. You know, the current chairman/dictator, one of his biggest power moves that actually led to him taking over leadership of China was his successful push to get the 2008 Summer Olympics into China. He is actually the main driving force that made the Olympics happen and made the Olympics successful in China and solidified his path to power when he finally took over. A lot of the bad things that happened on the lead up to the 2008 Olympics still exist in China. The crackdown on Tibet, the 2008 crackdown, is still in effect. I was there during 2008 and it was no joke. Foreigners whose visas were coming up to an end were no longer allowed to renew their visas in a country like Hong Kong or in any other country other than their home country. So it forced everybody to fly back home to renew their visas. You couldn't just do a visa run. I remember I was studying in the Shenzhen University at the time, and when they were running the Olympic torch through the city, all the students were locked in the university and not allowed to leave because they didn't want any foreign interference in this torch run. This really was quite a turning point in China, and the Olympics have meant a lot to the Chinese government because of face. It was the first time that China could show itself to the world as this developed nation. You know, this high-tech nation, this nation that's been lifted out of poverty. They put themselves on the world stage as a success. Not a country that's still developing and reaching a success, but as a foregone conclusion success. It's done. Look how great we are. The 2022 Beijing Olympics will serve the same purpose. They will solidify Xi Jinping's power even more and show the world again just how great China is. All the achievements China has managed to pull off. That is the reason, and China is using this as a political tool, not only to prove to its own citizens that the current government is the one that they should only trust and the only government for China and the only government that can achieve anything in China, but of course to the rest of the world, to show the rest of the world just how successful China is. Well, my friends, personally, I'm not big into activism. It's never been my thing. I don't like to try and interfere in what people are doing and events and things like that, but there's a little bit of a difference here. We've reached a point now where there's no doubt that things are not kosher within the borders of China. I've seen it myself. I made a lot of excuses for a lot of the things I saw in the past because I was having such a good time living in China. I admit that. There's a lot of mistakes I made. There's a lot of harsh, terrible things I've seen, as well as a lot of really good things I've seen in China. China does have a lot of merits, and I've discussed them in my videos. I've got over 1,000 videos. You can go back and look, and you can actually see kind of a progression of how things changed, how my mind changed over the years as I started to understand China more and more. The fact of the matter is that we currently do have people being persecuted for their religion and for their ethnicity in Xinjiang. We have these big vocational camps, also known as forced vocational camps, also known as concentration camps, also known as places where people are having their entire cultures stripped from them. Their language, their religion, their beliefs, all being stripped away. Things like beards being shaven, things like diets being changed. There is a long sorted list of what's going on there, and there are plenty of people who have come out to reveal what's been going on there. We have satellite imagery to prove that these camps are being built, and we also have video footage showing vast amounts of prisoners being forced in and out of these camps. It's no longer a, is this actually happening? It is a, it is happening. To what extent is it happening is still a little bit up in the air, but since China won't allow any independent outside investigations, we can guess that it's about as bad as people are expecting. Forced labor, sterilization, rapes, and all of that. I bet my money on that. The fact of the matter is that even if you don't care about the Uyghurs and the cultural genocide that's happening in China, even if you don't care about Tibet and what's going on in Tibet, even if you don't care about what happens to activists and human rights lawyers and anyone who speaks out against the government in China and gets disappeared, if you don't care about the arbitrary detentions of people like the two Michaels from Canada, who one of them is actually a friend of mine, if you don't care about the scary amount of power that the government has over the populace of China and how badly it affects people, especially people who try to step out of line or people who try to, be a little different from the norm. Even if this stuff doesn't bother you, think about how China's devastating the ecology of the world. How the massive clandestine fishing fleets are out there stripping the ocean of all life, throwing huge amounts of plastic into the oceans. The factories that are creating holes in the ozone layer. All the kind of stuff that's happening in China. At least one of those issues, just one of those things, whether it be the fact that there are no animal abuse laws in China, you are allowed to beat your dog, torture your dog or your cat or whatever to death in public, and it's totally within the bounds of the law. You could pick any one of these things as a reason not to support the Olympic Games. But think about it, there are all these different issues, and they're all together, and they're all happening in one country right now. And I think from a moral standpoint, we should not be encouraging this kind of behavior. Because if the 2022 Olympics go ahead, all it's going to result in is China getting a bunch of praise. They're going to get a lot of face because, believe it or not, the opinion of the outside world still means a hell of a lot to China, whether they want to admit it or not. So they're going to get a lot of praise. They're going to solidify, Xi Jinping's going to solidify his position even stronger, even more with the party and the people of China, to say, look at this great event that we can hold. Look at how amazing we are. We can do all of this. All the while pulling off some of the worst modern human rights atrocities known to man. I get it. People want China's money. People don't want to upset, especially if you're a part of a government. If you are part of a big corporation, you do not want to upset your potential market share in the Chinese market, the biggest market in the world. I get that. It's greed, it's part of capitalism and all that nonsense. But at the same time, there has to be a moral component to what we do in life. And if there's even the slightest chance that any of these things are going on in China, so even if you don't believe that there's a cultural genocide against the Uyghurs, even if you don't believe any of this stuff, surely the fact that there's even a question whether or not it's happening should be enough for you to say, no, I won't support the 2022 Winter Olympics. At the end of the day, it's going to be a personal choice to all of you. I know that I personally will not be supporting them. I do not want my actions to hurt or reflect badly on the average Chinese person out there, and I know that most Chinese people are very proud of the fact that China is going to host these games. And I don't want to insult them by saying that I do not want China to host these games, because it's not about the people. I love and care about the people of China, and I want them to be proud of their country. But I want them to be proud of their country because it's worthy of being proud of. I do not want them to be proud of their country just because their country is good at forcefully bullying its way and doing what it wants and getting its way while doing horrible, atrocious things at the same time. All of this aside, I've been approached by various organizations who are trying to put a stop to the Beijing Olympics, and they've got petitions to sign and that kind of thing. Once I've vetted some of these people and made sure it's not just a bunch of malarkey, I will certainly be passing on the details to all of you. And I really hope we can make a difference. And the only way to ever force change in China is to make China lose face. And by China, I mean the Chinese government. And if somehow we manage to prevent the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympic Games from happening, this will make China lose a huge amount of face and perhaps, just perhaps, convince them to stop being such assholes. Anyway guys, until next time, you know the drill. Unlike the CCP, stay awesome.